All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Kratz, and I have just authored a book. I'm really excited for you all to join virtually and celebrate. It is Lead Like an Ally, and it's a journey through corporate America with strategies to facilitate inclusion. So, diversity and inclusion is near and dear to my heart. I've been studying, researching it ever since my corporate America days. I like to say I served my time in corporate America for a good 12 years. And this is really an accumulation of lessons learned I experienced as a people leader in corporate America, but also in the last 6 years managing my business, Next Pivot Point. The challenges, the subtle setbacks that we face as allies, and sometimes as being the only in the conversation or the only person that looks like you. So that is something that I really strive for. My purpose in the work I do is to make sure that everyone feels seen, heard, and that they truly belong in the workplace. So a bit about me, if I've yet to meet you, I'm excited to meet you, if not in person, virtually. And the benefit is we get everyone from all over the country, and we have some special guests here joining us in just a minute that I was fortunate enough to get to help me with the foreword of the book. So Brad, um, and Dave will be joining us here in a minute. I'll give them a proper introduction here in a minute. But my background, like I said, I'm an author, a speaker, a trainer. I talk about inclusive leadership and engaging men as allies and overall allyship in the workplace. So, what does it mean to be an ally? And why do allies matter? And how to be an ally for somebody that's different than you? All of which we're going to cover in great detail today. While I started my business, Next Pivot Point, centered on a topic around women's leadership, I've really expanded that to an overall conversation about equality for all. That's my little one, Jane, pictured there, and she often asks me in my talks, which she is just in the next room next door right now, and I've asked her to be quiet. But in my talks, she always says, "Mom, did you talk about me at work today?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do get to talk about you because you're always in my introduction slide." But kidding aside, she is why I do what I do. If you think about something like gender equality, I'll share some data with you. We're 208 years away from that. And I don't know about you, boys, girls, anyone on the gender spectrum, that just feels like a little too long to wait. So if I get to be a small part of a positive change, that's really success for me. And I actually have some really exciting personal news that I decided to kind of share with you all. So in the spirit of vulnerability, which our allies do, I just found out this morning that I'm actually expecting a new baby. So officially got the ultrasound and everything this morning. So this is hot off the presses. This is my first photograph sharing that. So I've only shared it with friends and family, but I thought, this is a special, really cool thing that I just found out about again. So Ally on the way coming October 2020. I suspect there will be a lot of these allies on the way with the COVID situation. I guess there's silver linings everywhere. So that's pretty exciting stuff that I'm really excited about. And if you think about the future workplace for young people, it makes me emotional even thinking about it. Bringing people into the world, that it has to be a place where everyone feels welcomed and truly feels heard and truly feels a sense of belonging. So that's me. That's my background. That's why I do what I do. I'm going to fix these weird lights on my head in a minute. The sun's playing tricks on me here. But I did want to introduce some amazing allies that I know that have supported my work, that have been so kind to endorse and write a forward amongst all the things that they're doing on stages, speaking around the country themselves, and authoring books. So if you have yet to meet or be introduced to David Smith's or Brad Johnson's work, they're fantastic allies. I got connected with them a few years ago. And when they were writing and publishing Athena Rising, how and why men should mentor women, highly recommend. They're ahead of their time. This was back in 2016, before Me Too and all the stuff that we're seeing in the news since, and really talk about the myths around gendered relationships and partnerships in the workplace, and why mentoring is one of the best forms of allyship. And lately, they've got a new book coming out in October of 2020, Good Guys, How Men Can Be Better Allies for Women in the Workplace. So as you can see, we are tremendous allies of their work, and I'm so thankful to have them with us. So I'm going to get them here on the line and let them talk about what they do. And like I said, they were so kind to support and introduce some of my work. So David, I found you. I'm going to unmute you. So if you're ready, I'll give you a 3-minute warning here and I'll get you Dave. And then
Hi,
Brett.
Julie.
All right, I got you both unmuted.
Great. You want us on video or not? I'm assuming not.
Either way is fine with me.
Well, hey, thanks first for writing this book and then also including us, allowing us the privilege to write the forward. It was so much fun for Brad and I to stand up here and be a raving fan for you today. And as we continue forward in this ally journey, and it's great to have allies like you. And I see a bunch of other great allies on the line here as well. As I was looking down the list, it's quite a compilation of allies out there, right? We need to mark a point in time in history, having all of us in this space, kind of in one room, on Zoom, and it's tremendous to be here. But for those of you who haven't had the chance to read Lead Like an Ally, a few things here I would just like to highlight, and one is that one of the beautiful things about the book is the fact that, so Julie gives you the context of the story as you go through there, and you get a chance to see Jane as she goes through the book. But I think one of the things that we find a lot in industries today is that men are, for a whole host of reasons, either not comfortable or just not sure how to engage in this world of gender allyship or gender partnership out there. And and that could be for a host of reasons, but everybody's clamoring for the toolbox, right? It's like, oh, what should I do? What are the best practices? What are the things? And that's what, I think one of the things that I love the most about the book is that across all different areas at work, almost just about anything you could think of, Julie's got a best practice, a toolkit there, and certainly the resources that connect to that, and to give guys that idea about how to do this, and not just to do it in isolation, but to do it with, right, the partner with women. So us together as allies, as men and women together, as being part of that solution. And Julie, I love that you shared today your great news. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Exciting, and because we all know that allyship starts not in the workplace, but at home, right? And so you have such a great ally team at home that you talk about all the time. And again, we all need to be doing more of that out there in the workplace. So congratulations. We're excited to celebrate the book with you today and to continue to talk about it and get everybody out there reading it.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you. That means so much to me. Thanks, Dave.
Julie, can you
Brad,
hear me?
Yeah, go for it, Brad.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, I am so delighted to be joining you as well. And as Dave said, we have been huge Julie Kratz fans for a long time. And looking back over the last several years, Julie, you really have sort of led the way on this ally conversation. I know that you had in your book one of the first books on this, sort of offering guidance for guys on how to be better. And Dave and I have taken a lot of your gems, in our own work and our own speaking, and applied them. And then in the new book, Lead Like an Ally, I love the fact that you lead off the book with the comment that this is not a woman's issue, right? And Dave and I have found so often that men hear about inclusion, or they hear about gender and diversity, and they immediately check out and tell themselves, "Oh, that's a women's thing, right? I don't have a voice here. I don't have a role to play." And I love the way that your book opens up, sort of pushing back on that narrative. And so many of the things that you talk about resonate with both men and women that we spoke with in our interviews for the books that we work on. But, simple things, in retrospect, at least, things that guys often don't think about enough, like just including her, right? Making sure that she's at that meeting or has a place at the table or a voice. Making sure that you're not only doling out those stretch assignments to guys, but including these high potential women when you're thinking about pushing people forward for opportunities. And then, of course, the meeting behavior stuff. I love your chapter on, meetings are really kind of dangerous places sometimes if you're not a dude, right? And so,
Or you're just someone
uh,
that's different, right?
yeah, somebody who's different, and I love, the way that you address that and kind of bring to the fore things that I think men often miss in the workplace. These are things that don't happen to us as much. We're not interrupted. Our ideas aren't stolen. We're not given office housework. And I love the way that you sort of bring that to the fore. So um, anyway, all that, I don't want to monopolize your awesome webinar here, Julie, but just for everyone who's listening, Dave and I are so enthusiastic about the work Julie does, and we love her writing, and hope that we can be colleagues with Julie for many years to come.
Oh, thank you. That makes me feel so special. I did not pay them to say all that, I promise. But it really, when the silver linings of all this, being able to have Brad and Dave, where if we were here and I'm based out of Central Indiana, we wouldn't be able to have access to all these amazing allies all over the country. So this is definitely an added bonus of being able to have truly the experts that are leading the way in this conversation with me today. So books, The Good Guys is not coming out till this fall, but I believe you can pre-order it on Amazon, correct? Brad, Dave, correct?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, perfect. And you can follow their work, Stand Up for Equality. They post regularly and have HBR articles written about this topic. So thank you so much for that and getting us kicked off in an exciting way. So I want to get everybody engaged. I see some chats coming in here. Yes, it is not a woman's issue. I think you got a high five on that one. And it really isn't. There's another comment about, is this gender allyship and a conversation about intersectionality? Yes. So yes and yes. Women's issues cannot be solved by women alone, right? And diversity issues cannot be survived by, or cannot really be tackled just by people that quote unquote identify as diverse. There's so many more wrinkles to the conversation. And so while my work did start out in gender, I've really broadened that through the lens of being honest to myself as someone that identifies as white, as a woman, how can I be an ally for others, right? And so even though the conversation around Lead Like an Ally is threaded through the story of a woman in corporate America, there's conversations about race, LGBTQ, as well as disabilities. And so there's a kind of the big four on diversity and inclusion. However, there are so many more dimensions of diversity. So I appreciate that conversation and the collective impact Diane said as well. So I promised some polling exercises, and me being kind of new to the techie stuff, I'm getting comfortable with this, as we all are with Zoom. I'd love to hear from everybody what you hope to learn today. So anything about an hour of your life, I take a lot of kind of ownership in making sure that it's valuable for you and that you walk away with some tangible tools. Did you want to join to learn more about diversity and inclusion? Learn more about maybe inclusive leadership. So that's really the subject of the book. Just curious about the book in general, or want tools to apply at your organization. Good news is we will achieve all four of these objectives, but I always like to know my audience and what you'd like to gain first. So hopefully we're getting close to 50% as people have voted. So this keeps you on your toes a little bit, gets you to pay attention. You can't be multitasking here. All right, good. We got 2/3 vote in. It looks like the front runner is learn about inclusive leadership. Yay, I love that. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. Curious about the book. Awesome. I promise we'll deliver on that. And tools to apply at your organization. So perfect. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up polling. Thanks to the 78% that already participated. So let's talk more about this subject of inclusive leadership. And other things that you're going to learn today is when I talk about inclusive leaders, I also mean allies. I actually use those terms synonymously. That's my vocabulary. As far as I'm aware, there is no authority on allyship or inclusive leadership. There's lots of people like me, Brad, Dave, others that have joined us today and around the country. They talk about these subjects, but I use them interchangeably. So if I say allyship, I mean inclusive leadership. Inclusive leadership often means allyship. So why do allies matter? Why does it matter to be an inclusive leader? What does this have to do with anything? what an ally is and what an ally does, and some of the do's and don'ts of allyship. And then the 6 principles from the book. I'm going to actually do kind of a quick hot topic on each one and ask a trivia question. So I'll be giving away 6 copies of the book. And then we'll end with commitments and a virtual toast. So I do not have alcohol with me, since that is obviously not appropriate for me right now. I had planned to do that, but if you all have a virtual toast, I know there's been a lot of virtual happy hours going on. I'd love to do that at the top of the hour. Just recognize y'all for being here and celebrate with you, if not just virtually, but kind of toasting to what do we learn? What can we walk away with, and make sure that this hour is impactful for you. So the first thing I always like to talk about in any conversation I'm giving about allyship is why. Okay. And this is probably the number one question I get asked, especially from a gender perspective. Why do women need men? And it's not that we need men. It's just we're going to advance the conversation so much more quickly when we include everyone in the conversation. So quick backstory on diversity and inclusion, and women's leadership fell into this as well, is we got people in groups that identify as women, that identify as having disabilities, that identify as LGBTQ, or of different racial or ethnicity groups. And we kind of said, okay, this is your problem to solve. Okay. So employee resource groups, for example, inside organizations, conferences labeled a certain way. The challenge is, by only talking to each other, we're not talking a lot of times, honestly, to the decision makers and the people that are able to have a higher level of power and privilege in most situations that influence positive change. So I know I went to a lot of women's leadership conferences and will come back all excited, and then it falls on deaf ears back in the organization. It's like, this problem's not getting solved by me alone, right? It feels very frustrating. So why do we need allies? So I mentioned before, being an ally is being inclusive. Being inclusive is a part of being a leader. So I remember in my corporate America days, what does leadership mean? What kind of leader do I want to be? And I took a lot of ownership in that, but it was also really confusing, and I didn't always know what to say or do in situations, especially around something sensitive like diversity and inclusion. And if you ask most middle managers inside organizations, that 2/3 Caucasian men, they don't want to open this can of worms, and that's a huge problem. So we got to meet our allies where they're at. And allyship is also in the eye of the beholder. So you don't get to claim to be an ally. It's much something that you're more recognized as. So some key stats here that I'm sharing, 87% better decisions. So with inclusive teams, they make better decisions 87% of the time. So if you get like kind of a 2x factor there, excuse me, 19% higher revenues associated with diverse teams. And if you like, excuse me, the diversity and inclusion analogy that's often been used for many years is diversity is being invited to the party. And inclusion is being asked to dance, I think was the famous one that went around a few years ago. I say inclusion is feeling like you belong at the party. So it's somebody asking you, how do you feel? Or, hey, partaking in a conversation, wanting to stay longer, those types of things. And this is what's really missing in corporate America, that yes, we're focused on diversity, but oftentimes it feels like diversity for diversity's sake. We want more women leaders. We want to recruit more ABC type of talent. It's more like meeting a metric than actually making sure that once people are here, that they feel a sense of belonging, that they actually want to stay here. Because if they don't feel like they want to stay here, right, what's the point in doing all of that recruiting if we don't retain and engage the talent once they're here? And the underpinning of all of this is they found actually 70% of someone's association with inclusion at work is with their direct manager. Okay, so direct managers have a huge, huge role in this, but they don't know what to do. They don't have the tools. They're scared. Something like gender equality, although Lead Like an Ally does speak to overall diversity and inclusion, here's some key stats from a gender perspective. There's just some really good reporting out there about the pay gap. So if you look at this from an intersectional experience, yes, women on average, studies vary 77 to 82 cents on the dollar. Women of color, though, from an intersectional experience, intersectionality means more than one dimension of diversity intersecting with another. Women of color is usually the most common type of intersectionality that people reference. So African-American women, 64 cents, Latino women, 56 cents. So I don't know about you, but that just feels very wrong. Similar work, very different pay structures. Women in the workplace, if you haven't checked this out and you want some ammunition to support the conversation in your organization, the latest report came out in the fall. And women miss out on the first promotion. So we find right from the get-go, men are 2/3 more likely to get promoted than our female colleagues. They call this the broken rung concept. And then slow progress. The US ranks 53rd. I think actually in the world, so that number is actually getting worse. I need to update that slide on gender equality. If you look at the top 10, I think you'd be surprised. Kind of speaks to the competitiveness of Americans. We're not winning this game, right? We are actually slipping behind other countries that are doing some amazing things to support equality. So why? Why do we need allies? Those with privilege, I call it the P word, can help. And white men oftentimes are at the top of organizations. 80% or so are led by men that identify as white. And so some key stats here. Boston Consulting Group did a research study on women's led initiatives inside companies with just women versus engaging men as allies. 3x difference in success rate. Okay, nearly 100% success rate when you engage men. So I don't know about you, but I'm going to take those odds. Lean In does an annual report. I'm not sure if that'll still be coming out this spring. Usually it comes out in the spring. Brad and Dave got me, I think I saw their post 2 years ago, the first report. And it's astonishing. Last year's numbers got worse. So 60% of managers who are men feel uncomfortable participating in one-on-one activities with women, like socializing or mentoring. You know, I often joke like, well, women, what if you told women like, you can't work one-on-one with men? Like we wouldn't get our jobs done. Like, women don't even think that's a choice, right? Or anybody that identifies with the diversity of dimension. That's just not a privilege we have. We have to work with people from other genders and people that are different than us. Catalyst, another great organization, just some key stats right now. We're hovering between 5 and 6% on CEOs as far as women goes in any given reporting time period. 21% of board suites, about a quarter of C-suite positions, and women are 45% of the workforce. And this goes for every industry. People like to say their industry is male-dominated. Find me a female-dominated one. Nonprofit, healthcare, education, all run primarily by white men at the top. So no industry is above this. So please do not use that excuse. All right, another polling question. I'm going to check in on the chat. I see some people participating. Thank you. You're making it interesting. So why does this matter to you? Okay, so when you think about, I gave you some whys for allies. Why does this matter to you? And I'm going to break it into 3 categories. First, I often see there's a business case. So I gave you those numbers, 87%, the 19%, there's a 21% higher profitability. I could give you number after number. Google diversity and HBR, and you will find reams of data to support this. The data's been around forever. It's not changing. It's not, the diversity is stagnant despite all that great data. So the business case, is that what gets you excited about it? Is that something your organization maybe could get excited about? The human case, this is back to the belonging factor and people feeling seen, heard, and belong. Or do you just have a personal interest? A lot of times people tell me like, I was just raised a certain way to support people, or this is just like kind of in my core. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch that poll. Why does this matter to you? When you think about something like diversity and inclusion and allyship, what is going on in your world? Okay, I'm gonna check in on the chat while we're Yeah, Stephen, share the slides. Yep, you'll get the recording after, Stephen. Mike had compelling. I would have thought we'd be making more progress. So I always share those numbers. I think everyone knows these numbers, but they don't. And they're not well shared, right? Why are they so hidden? Like, why do we have to go and find them? And actually, once you know these organizations, McKinsey, Catalyst, Pew Research Center, HBR, all of them have this data in the regular report. You just got to look for it. Shani shared, nope, women of color are always last. We do work getting white women to use their privilege for women of color. Yep, white women are doing much better. I strive to be an ally, right? We don't get to self-proclaim. Allyship is in the eye of the beholder, but totally agree with you, Shani. It's something that I wrestle with, my privilege and wanting to help. Yes, Brooke, I am sharing the recording. Thanks for being an ally. Karen said all of the above. And Karen Catlin, if you haven't followed her work, she's written some tremendous books about allyship, Better Allies. And she has this new book about hiring practices, which I think coming out of this, everyone's going to need a copy of that book, Karen. Yes. So please chat, share, just like Karen did, everything Looks like the human case. So it's funny that I suspected the human case would be more compelling with those that we have on the line. When I do this with business owners, though, corporate America leaders, it's almost always the business case, which is kind of telling, isn't it? The human case is actually what I would argue is what's going to get us across the finish line for this, given that we've had this data for the business case, and this is what diversity numbers have basically done is stagnate. So women, same, very much mirror images 10 years ago versus now, have not changed much. People of color, people with disabilities, everything that we can measure is flatlining. Okay, it's not getting better despite the belief, I think we want to believe it's getting better, right? So the human case is what we need to paint a picture of, like, why is this good for everyone as a human being? Why is it important to feel included at work? Which I think all of us intuitively understand, but you would be surprised about other people that don't identify as diverse or don't identify with a cause around diversity inclusion. There's a huge bridge that we have to create around this. So that's where the conversation's going to go. So human case, I'm glad to hear that that resonates with you all. And please do chat if you've got other thoughts. Happy to share those as well. All right. What? So the what of allyship. So when I talk about allies, a lot of times people say, well, what is an ally? Okay, so why does an ally matter? What is an ally? Allies wear a lot of hats. Okay, so I have like these little bubble people here, but I often put them in 5 categories. So I use the analogy allyship as like an umbrella, okay? If you imagine like the spokes going out from the umbrella, you could be a mentor, and this is what Brad and Dave talk about in their first book. A mentor is a really incredible form of allyship. So a mentor is basically you 2.0, you in the future, 3 years from now. Who do you want to be? How do you surround yourself with somebody you want to learn from? You want to be like, you want to emulate somebody who's been there, done that can teach you how to get there. Advocates. So this is somebody that champions you, just like Brad and Dave did at the beginning of the conversation. I often share them as an example in my work when I'm talking about this as advocacy. And that's often public as well as private. And the public piece is really important because it creates really positive peer pressure for other people, especially other white men, to engage in this conversation when there's a lot of fear, that 60% number. Challengers, and this is really important because what we know is that we're less likely to challenge people that identify as diverse. So whether it's women, people of color, list goes on, we don't want to upset them, okay? Somehow, we want to protect, right? Because things are different for them. Whereas white men are much more likely to get candid feedback, stretch assignments, be put in positions that they haven't been in before. So they're much more likely to be judged on potential versus actual performance. This is a problem. Challengers hold up the mirror and they're like, hey, did you see this? Right? You're awesome. Or, hey, you haven't done this before, but we're going to give you this stretch assignment, right? They put you in a position to grow rather than to be safe. Coaches, and in having my coach certification, this is probably my favorite ally role, is they promote self-discovery. So this is not somebody that gives you advice, and this is what ally doesn't save the day. There's no white cape. There's no rescue horse. So we insert analogy from any fairy tale. It's not what an ally does. It's not sustainable. It's not helpful. It doesn't teach anybody how to survive on their own. A coach stands back, listens, asks questions, gives you space to process, and then lets you come up with your own solution. So I use oftentimes, remember when you were a kid and your parents told you what to do versus when they asked you, like, well, what do you think you should do? I didn't know my mom was really clever at doing this growing up. Well, I don't know, Julie, sounds like a problem. What do you think? I don't know, just tell me. But I had to wrestle with it and figure it out. And that actually made me stronger. That made me better. And that's what allies do really well, intentionally. And then last form is sponsorship. And this is a huge area, a gap for those that identify in diverse groups because they're less likely to have access to people in positions of power or influence. So think of a sponsor as like the hub of a circle in your organization. Take it on an org chart and circle the people that if you shared an idea with them, it'd go like lightning through the organization. Or they were in a meeting and they said yes to the idea, it's going to go. Those are sponsors. These are people that are in rooms where decisions are made or are privy to decisions that are had behind closed doors. We need access to them so they can support us in our career growth and our project assignments, but they have to know what we want, okay? So this is a two-way street. Allies need to do their part, but we also need to do our part to engage allies. And then at a core definition level, if I had to sum up allyship in one sentence, and I've worked on this for many years because I was like, I don't know how to describe it or make it simple. It is simple. It's someone that's there for someone that's different than themselves. Okay. If I were just going to make it really simple, it could be one of those roles. It could be all of those roles. It could be two at the same time. It could be something totally different. Those are just the big five that I see. But I would say it's somebody that's there for you, right? It's somebody that this person's different than me, but I'm going to support them. It's not I'm supporting my mini me, because that's easy to support somebody that you're like, they're just like me when I was younger. That happens way too much in corporate America. Stop doing that. But because we have affinity bias and we like people like us, we gravitate towards being allies for people like us and engaging allies that are like us. We learn so much more when we engage people different than ourselves. So I often share, being an ally, you actually usually get a lot more out of the relationship than the person that's being given the gift of allyship, because you grow through offering help and learning about somebody's differences and flexing a bit to their needs instead of just always being in that same mode with people like you. It's important to note, not everybody's an ally, and you probably know people that fit into these categories. I've heard so many doozies over the years, I can only imagine. But Jennifer Brown, another amazing ally in this space, often says it's a continuum. So she has kind of 4 steps in her latest book about inclusive leadership. I kind of make them into 3 buckets. I'm a super simple, like stats 101 type of person. There's the outliers on the sides. There's a do not get it team. They're either apathetic, meaning they just aren't aware of the issue, just like the stats I shared earlier. A lot of people aren't even aware that there's a problem. And then there's people that don't want to acknowledge that it's a problem. That's a whole different issue, right? But the people that don't get it, that want to get it, that's cool. We can get them into want to get it category. That's where most people are. So research roughly shows about 2/3 of people want to be an ally. They don't know what to do. They need the script. They need the toolbox. And then we have our trusted allies. Again, Brad and Dave, since they're with us, get it. They already get it. And I find myself in organizations a lot with these people, and it's like singing to the choir, right? We need the people in the middle, right? We need these people. We need to identify them, help them understand how your voice is so critical to this conversation, that we want you to feel included, that we want you to support diversity and inclusion. Because it's a journey. It is not a destination. Old Aerosmith song, I borrowed that line from way back on a day, but it is true. You don't get to claim to be the perfect ally. If we're waiting for people to be perfect, we will wait forever, okay? So acknowledge mistakes, correct people. I correct people all the time. Like, hey, actually, there's a new word that people are using to describe race, for example. Or I had somebody just say something that was a little off color, and I just said, hey, I think what you meant was this. Or, hey, help me understand why you said that, or what you meant when you said that, right? And there's easy ways to subtly call out and bring people into the conversation versus get them in defensive mode and shame them, okay? So who are your allies? I gave you those 5 buckets: mentors, sponsors, challengers, advocates, coaches. Who have been some of yours? I love hearing personal stories. So if anyone wants to type, this is a chat box type situation, no polls here, or just share, what's your favorite form of allyship? I mentioned coaching. That's kind of one near and dear to my heart. But who have been your allies along the way? Have you had mentors? Have you had sponsors, advocates? Diane's got coaching and mentoring. Victoria I define allyship as the relationship between an ally and a partner, the same way someone cannot mentor in isolation. An ally cannot and should not do this work alone. No, that's the opposite of inclusion. Thanks, Victoria. Sponsor, says Melinda. Mentor, Shani had Irma Johnson Hadley, first Black Chancellor of the Tarrant County College District. Awesome. Thank you. Ashley had a male mentor of almost 20 years, long past my time at the company. Oh, that's cool, Ashley. Mike, managers who were advocates, challengers, and coachers. Got the coach and the challenger design shared. Awesome. So just identify, it really helps to personify your allies. Victoria had my grad school teacher advisor, and aside from my husband, a lot of people do say they're partners. Dijon inspirers. Yep. Lee had being a male mentor is just the right thing to do. And you are, Lee. You live that every day. Shani, accomplices that go beyond allyship. Yes, allyship, we can argue advocacy takes it a next level. I totally agree with you. Ally is somebody standing side by side with you, partnering with you, engaging with you. I've had all at some point. The sponsor is the one that created the greatest opportunities. Yes, sponsorship is a huge differentiator. And again, oftentimes, again, people in the majority group, being white, male, able-bodied, etc., tend to have access to those sponsors. Gives us a leg up if that's the source of privilege. Not always, but usually. Mike, one of the strongest advocates, is a woman of color who's my manager. Oh, that's cool. That's probably why you're with us today and supportive of this topic. Excellent. We are a product of our experiences. Yes, absolutely. So terrific. Without further ado, I want to introduce some of the content from the book. I just wanted to kind of tee that up and get our appetite for allyship and why it's important and what it is. So the how piece, how to be an ally, how to have an inclusive culture, how to lead like an ally. So I have to share, it was a little over a year ago, which in hindsight, I would have loved to be writing right now because I have so much time on my hands. But nonetheless, I was writing a year ago. And finally, the book is out in the world. But I thought to myself, what's the recipe? You know, everyone always wants to know, like, what are the things I need to do to have an inclusive workspace? I'm like, you can't make it that simple, right? I resisted. And I had this moment at a whiteboard. It's kind of my beautiful mind moment where I'm like putting everything together. I'd done a bunch of interviews. I was reflecting my own personal experiences, the treasure trove of stories that people have shared with me over the years. And I thought, what's the recipe? The first thing that came to mind that I thought this story has to address this is cultural issues, because there's some toxic behaviors happening in the workplace still, because people share things with me that are just so egregious that you're shocked that in 2020, these things and the things I'm asked on stage in public audiences is deeply troubling. So first step is cleaning up your culture. And in Lead Like an Ally, I have a quick assessment. I actually have one that I'll share with y'all following this meeting. It's 20 questions. It's free. It's anonymous. It's on my website. But it's things like, some indicators might be, our meetings have diverse perspectives, right? We have people from different backgrounds, races, and genders. So think about your organization. Is that true? When someone is treated disrespectfully, someone on our team speaks up. Do you speak up, or do people like, that was awkward? Our cultural values are representative of our team and the team we want to be. So what are your values and how do they map to diversity and inclusion? And I don't necessarily argue for an overt diversity or inclusion cultural value or core value. It's more, how are they woven into the fabric and embedded in the organization rather. How much do you feel that we all feel included in our culture? Do we all have the opportunity to be our full selves at work? Do we have a culture of allies where people are helping each other that are different from one another? Are we accepting of non-binary genders in the workplace, for example? So this conversation can really evolve and tackle a lot of different things, but I'd be curious to hear from you, from a clean up the culture perspectives, how much are truly voices being all heard, people being seen, and people feeling a sense of belonging. So I mentioned, and anyone that's got the book in front of them has a little unfair advantage, but I mentioned there'll be some trivia questions, and I will send you a free autographed copy. The first trivia question for you, first correct answer in the chat, is name one tangible way to assess your culture of inclusion. So what is one tangible way? Shani, first acknowledge the culture is jacked up. I'm going to have to give it to you. Climate survey. Yes, you definitely got it. Between those two, you got a copy. So Shani, if you want to private message me, I'll put my email up at the end too. Just get me your address. I've got everything ready to go out in the mail today. So everyone will be getting a copy that wins one of the questions. I love that candid response. That's awesome. I get such a kick out of these things. I'm very lonely here in my home office. It's so fun to hear from everybody. Anonymous questionnaire. Yes, Sarah, thanks for adding to that. And I'll get the link. It's nextpivotpoint.com/assessment. I've got a whole updated 20 questions on there now since writing the book. And yes, one-on-one focus groups. I think the best thing you can do, honestly, is have proactive one-on-one conversations asking some of these questions. If you're a manager, like, just ask people a couple questions here and there. And if you actually listen, you don't have to solve, just listen. You'll get some golden nuggets on how you can be better. Yeah, qualitative and quantitative. And so just put the feelers out. There's a whole section in the book on that. And then I put the link, nextpivotpoint.com assessment. So feel free to check that out. Okay, cool. So that's step one, clean up the culture, look for the bad signs, admit that it's jacked up, I think was the quote, and clean it up. So the second chapter and the second key focus of Lead Like an Ally is stretch talent equally. Okay, and so when we check this, Brad and Dave teed this up so nicely, so that women in particular and anyone that identifies as the non-majority. So when I say majority, it's usually white, male, cisgender, able-bodied, straight. Okay, so if we can just go with those as kind of the norms of the majority group, those that are leading inside most organizations, not always, but usually about 80%. If you identify, if any one of those markers you don't identify, right, that would be something that you might identify as being in a diverse category. Okay. And so we want to, if you're not of the majority group, you're less likely to be stretched. Okay. And when I use the term stretched, you're less likely to be given candid feedback. You're less likely to be coached, which is one of my favorite ally roles. You are less likely to be put in a position to do something that you have not already done before because people haven't seen somebody like you do it before. Okay. It's just kind of this doubt. Whereas if you see a white man, a lot of times we'll make the assumption, well, he's a go-getter. He's got success written all over him. These types of things are said all the time in the workplace, even though he's never done anything relatively close to what we're asking him to do. So this is stretching talent equally. Trivia question coming up. First one to win. Name one biased word used to describe women's performance. Okay, so this I did not give you. I'm not spoon feeding this one. This is one that I'm going to ask. And first one. Oh, Shannon had it, nurturing. Yes, we use that word a lot for women. We expect it, and when women aren't nurturing, we don't like it. Emotional, Darcy, close second. That was awesome. Aggressive, Sarah, that's my number one. Oh, we don't call men aggressive for doing the same exact behavior. It's not fair. Soft, Diana. Yeah. So there's this double-edged sword, like too soft, too hard. Like which one do we be? Abrasive, Victoria. Yeah, bossy. I'll never forget 2 years ago, I watched a Sheryl Sandberg video and she was talking about how we call girls bossy and we don't call boys bossy. And I had just called my daughter bossy. And I realized like that has to be eliminated from my vocabulary. Now I call her assertive, combative. Yes, the B word, Diane. Thank you for being honest. So that's awesome. So officially, which one? I'll bet these are so good. I knew I didn't have to give you the answers. Shannon, nurturing. Shannon, either private message me your mailing address or send me an email. I'll get your copy of Lead Like an Ally in the mail. So Shannon is our second winner. Thanks for having some fun with this, guys. Not guys, that's also not an inclusive word. Everyone and y'all. So it's constant practice. I told you it was a journey, not a destination. That is one that I always get tripped up on. Establish ally network. So the third chapter in Lead Like an Ally is really about taking this concept of one-on-one allyship and expanding it so that allyship is more of a norm culturally. Okay, so this is trying to build a wrapper of inclusion culturally. I mentioned before 5 different ally roles, okay, and let me see, trivia question. Oh, Dan had y'all people. Is it wrong that I call my son bossy sometimes? Victoria, I love it. Hey, the Flip It to Test It that Kristen Pressner offers, and Kristen was so kind to write a review and endorse my book. And Flip It to Test It. Everyone needs to watch 10-minute TED Talk. If it's okay if you say it to a boy and a girl. It's okay if you say it to a man and a woman, but we only say it to one gender. That becomes a problem. Okay. All right, cool. Okay, so next trivia question for the third copy is establish ally network. So what is one of the pivotal roles an ally can play in someone's career? I gave you 5 roles earlier. Oh, yay. Ashley had mentor. Wait, I'm trying to keep track of everybody's. This is why I need a moderator. Ashley had mentor. Perfect. So Ashley is our third winner. Coach, Diane. Yes, that was also one. Let's see what other ones have come. Challenger. Yes. Mentoring, privilege. Yes. Awesome. These are all great. Yes. So mentor, advocate, sponsor, challenger, coach. All of those roles absolutely are ones. And when you have these woven into the fabric of the organization and people are practicing these behaviors often, you really have an inclusive culture that's such a differentiator. And oftentimes the reason somebody wants to stay, this is how you get high performing talent, by creating these roles and making it a cultural norm. All right, 4th chapter is about meeting behavior. Oh, there's so many bad things that can happen in meetings. And I remember this from my corporate days, leading a lot of bad meetings. So think about meetings and how much do you actually want to go to them? Like how much do you look forward to going to meetings? Like even just the word meeting itself, like I have a meeting, usually is not met with optimism. Now, there are some negative meeting behaviors, and one of the terms that Brad and Dave actually taught me is bro-appropriations, okay? And this is a term for, generally speaking, for male behavior that's used against women, okay? And a lot of it's not with bad intentions necessarily, it just has a negative impact. It's things like interruptions. It's things like mansplaining. And this can be used for other diversity dimensions, like white-splaining also happens too. Or it can be taking ideas that were once somebody else's. Oftentimes a woman, person of color will share a comment in a meeting. 5 minutes later, a white man shares the same idea. Suddenly it has merit and it's Jim's idea. And now let's go with it. And that's not fair because we're not attributing the reward to the person that actually had the idea. Interruptions in particular are much more likely to happen from men. They still interrupt other men, but men actually interrupt women 4 times more. Okay, so there's actually been research done on this. The reason that's so important is because every interruption takes our brain 23 minutes to catch back up again. Okay, so you lose 23 minutes. If you have a half an hour meeting, your meeting's toast. Okay, even just an hour meeting, that's a long time to have to recalibrate. So interruptions are a really big deal. A couple more comments coming in. Shani had, or saying that it's articulate. Duck clips. That's mainly for people of color. Absolutely. Oh, she's so articulate. Yeah. Would you say that if it was a man? Again, flip it to test it. I'll put the flip it to test it in the notes as well. So next trivia question, 4th book giveaway. How many more times are men likely to interrupt than women? At 4X, Diane won. Yes, Neil, you were close. Awesome. Yes. So Diane, same goes. Just either private message me your mailing address or send me an email with that afterwards. Awesome. You all are paying attention. I love it. 5th chapter is about belonging. And this is a huge focus in corporate America. A lot of progressive companies that have been in the D&I space for many years, a decade plus, are evolving diversity and inclusion to add in the B for belonging. Okay, so there's even chief belonging officers of organizations that job is to create a sense of belonging inside organizations in which you've cleaned up the culture, managed meeting behavior, established ally networks. Oftentimes the next step is to really make sure that, again, people feel seen, heard, and belong. So when you think about factors of belonging, we need to think about all the things that I've mentioned so far today. If you were to think about a culture of belonging, the trivia question here is name one of the key attributes of a culture where people feel a sense of belonging. Inviting, Mike shares. So inviting, tell me a little more. Values. Oh, Sarah can bring their authentic self to work. That was super specific, Shani. I might have to give away a couple copies here. Shani, yep, natural hair. I have a great story. A woman of color shared with me in front of all of her peers in a group training session that after 5 years in an organization, she could wear her hair naturally, like the way her hair is intended to be worn. But for 5 years, she had to hide that part of her identity. And remember finding her in the bathroom at a break and her hugging me, that was the first time she'd been able to share that story. And when you think about that story, it just reminds me of how far we have to go with belonging in the workplace, right? Because these things are everywhere. And people that are not in those diverse groups oftentimes don't understand. As a white woman, I've never had someone want to touch my hair. And unfortunately, that's something that happens to women of color a lot more often, and it's not appropriate in the workplace. I think that goes without saying. Okay, so who's going to win this copy? Sarah, I'm going to give it to you. You were close, right behind Mike, with values. So we talked about inclusive values. So Sarah, thanks, Shani. I appreciate the commentary there. And Sarah, remind me, if you already won, I can go with Mike or Sarah on this one. So apologize for any confusion on the winner there. I want to make sure to give us some time for some Q&A. The last chapter here is measure success. So just like anything, profitability, we would not measure, right? Even if you're in a nonprofit, you would measure fundraising dollars or something. You have benchmarks, you have goals. Anything's important in business or an organization gets measured. What gets measured gets done. What gets inspected is expected, right? So there's all these adages around it, but I'm puzzled by how many organizations, when I come in, I'm like, tell me how you measure diversity and inclusion. Tell me how you measure gender equality. You know, you're really passionate about inclusion in the workplace. How do you know you're doing it? And they're like, well, we just know because we're a good place to work and people like working here. Employee engagement scores are strong. Now, I'm being a bit facetious here, but honestly, I don't get good answers when I ask this question. This is why this is a huge part of what I call creating a sustainable culture where you're actually building inclusive behaviors long-term, not just short-term one and done, because that's not the way D&I works. So I do have an inclusive leader checklist for this one that has 52 different things that you can measure as far as inclusive leadership attributes, but I won't bore you with all of that. You can check it out on the website. I'll link to it in the follow-up note. But what I would offer here is to look holistically at the employee experience, okay? And if you look at the life cycle of an employee, from recruiting to hiring to onboarding to performance reviews to promotions to pay increases to separation, all those areas, organizations are actually measuring not just who we recruit, right, from a diversity perspective, but who we retain, who we promote is very telling data, who we give pay increases to, and they actually break down this data and hold managers accountable to it. This is a best practice, and it's scary and daunting for a lot of organizations. Last trivia question is name one inclusive leadership behavior. So I've given you a whole bunch of options today, and I mentioned I have 52 on a checklist. Courage. Ooh, I love that, Shannon. Cultural humility, Sharon said. Oh, Victoria had courage as well. Empathy, Shannon and I talk about empathy so much. Empathy and courage. All right, so Shannon, if you did not already win, I'm losing track of all our winners. So Shannon, you win if you did not. Oh, Guillermo had genuine curiosity. All right, so who was after Shannon? Shani. So Shani, go ahead and text me or message me your address or send me an email with that. So those are all the copies I have to give away. Good news is the Kindle copies are only $1.99 through tomorrow. So if you try and buy a paperback book on Amazon, it's going to tell you a long ship date. I have personally bought one to test this, and they're shipping within a week. So you don't have to wait forever. It's not 2 days like normal Prime, but it does not qualify as an essential good right now, which I completely agree with that assessment. There's an audiobook that's only $5.99, and the Kindle version until tomorrow is $1.99. So here's our last polling exercise, and I'd love to open it up for Q&A. If I didn't answer a question that you'd like answered, please go ahead and chat those at me while we're wrapping up. Last polling activity for the day is, what ideas did you like the most? Okay, so I gave you the 6 areas from Lead Like an Ally: clean up the culture, stretch talent equally, establish ally networks, manage meeting behavior, promote belonging, and measure success. Which ones were helpful for you with your organization, or ones that you just thought might be easy or really landed on you? I like to say it's going to have an impact, and it's also not too hard to do. Those are really good criteria for picking what to do next with this content. Ooh, looks like a nice tie. See, this is really good intel for me because I want to know where to focus my content in future sessions. So belonging, yeah. And if you look at the world we're living in right now, belonging, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, remember that from grade school? Physiological needs, right? Basic needs, food, water, shelter. Safety needs, and then connection and belonging is that third rung of the pyramid. We're really missing this. We're disconnected physically. We're socially distancing, right? And so if I think about the future of work and when we pivot forward and reset, having a culture of belonging is a huge game changer. People now more than ever have to be a part of the solution to really pivot forward successfully. So thanks for indulging me in that one. That was a really fun exercise. So a couple things I just want to notice, I know we're down to the last 5 minutes today, and we'll end with a virtual toast, picking something you can tangibly do and walk away with today. I did want to mention I've got a whole new virtual series on inclusive leadership. So everything that was just talked about, vulnerability, empathy, candid conversations, bias, men as allies, different diversity dimensions, so LGBTQ, race and disabilities, as well as gender. And it's all self-guided. So I think now more than ever, if you want to be an ally, you can learn to be an inclusive leader. And I'm going to offer y'all a 10% discount on that program. And just know, if you've got a group of 50 or more, I'll discount it even more. And then the book, if you enjoyed this program and you've been following the work, if you could be so kind, a review is like gold to me right now. I have a goal to get 100 reviews this month. We are at 53 as of last checked, and I have been working so hard on this. It is not to make money. I promise you, Amazon does not write big checks to authors. it helps other people find it. So unless you have 100 reviews, it's really hard to come across in a search. If you search inclusive leadership or gender equality, my book is not listed on any of the first pages. Once you get to 100 reviews, makes it a lot easier for people to find you. Okay, so if you can give me the gift of 1 minute of your time to write a review, even if it is just simply fantastic book, great book on leadership, that is plenty. I will thank you. I will thank you. And it will mean so, so much to me. So let's wrap up with our virtual toast. I have a special toasting mug that I brought with me. Little Wonder Woman action going on here. So if you could, you've spent an hour of your life celebrating with me, and I'm so thankful. I wish we were in person and we could actually be closer than 6 feet to each other and hug. It's going to be so weird to hug somebody after all of this. What's one idea you can take action on and just kind of raise your virtual toasting device of choice? I've got my Wonder Woman mug, and share one key thing. So I'll read off some of the chats to end us off on a strong note. Flip it to test it. Yes, Diane, if you type flip it to test it with Kristen Pressner, I put her note in the chat too. 10 minutes of your life you will not regret. It's a fantastic TED Talk. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thanks, Shani. Thanks, Karen. Getting some thank yous. Love the mug. All right. Thank you. I see a lot of thank yous. I'm just making sure I'm going to get through all the questions. Thank you. Yes, the Y for reviews. It is not self-promotion. I promise you, people can't find it. It's very sad that people can't find it unless you have 100 reviews. So thank you. Cheers to your success. Thanks, Deb. Oh, thanks for being such a great mentor, Deb. Sarah, I'm going to reach out to people who don't look like me and ask them how they feel. Yes. And just listen. Listen with curiosity. You don't have to solve their problem. Thanks for the cheers, Dejan. The umbrella and people in the middle. Love it. Brooke had asking people gently why they say what they say. Oops, I'm moving too fast here. Oops. Helping them draw their own conclusion. Yes, I love that, Brooke. Diane, had you worked hard on the book? Glad to review it. Thank you, Diane. We need more leadership books by women. You would be surprised, Sarah. And podcasts too. 80% of leadership books are written by men, usually white men, and podcasts too. It's everywhere, male dominancy. Yes, we need more women to author and podcast. I'm going to be a mentor for someone cross-culturally. Thanks, Shani. Guillermo had cheers to your success for the book. Thank you, Guillermo. Thanks, Brooke. Oh, thanks. Making it my day job, Stephen. Love it, Stephen. I know you believe that. Mike had asking for their perspective, viewpoints, and goals. It's absolutely. I find in today's workplace, when I'm doing group coaching now, just saying, hey, temperature check around the room. I just want to see how everyone's doing, and just look and listen. I really fear for people not feeling seen and heard right now in a virtual workplace. That goes such a long way to genuinely care about people and check in with them. Promise you it makes a difference. It always has, but it really makes a difference now. Mike had asking for their perspective, viewpoints, and goals. Thanks, Mike. Yes, it really does. And it's the simple things. Of all my work on allyship over the years, I used to think it was like these big, grand gestures. It's the subtle things. It's the small things that really make a difference. It's saying, I care. I want to support you. I don't know what to say, but I want to be here for you. It can be messy. It can be imperfect. It's actually way better if it's perfect. And Shani, how are you really? Yes, yes. Getting to the human level. Victoria had micro behaviors and they speak volumes. Micro behaviors, just like microaggressions, the subtle, small acts of kindness help to replace the microaggressions, those things like bro-appropriations, meeting behavior, all the negatives that we talked about. So micro-affirmations is a powerful tool. One last ask, anybody that want a copy, I'd love to get these 6 books in the mail tonight. So if you could, I've got, here's my email address, julie@nextpivotpoint.com. I'll send out a recording to everybody that registered, so you'll get that in your inbox. Please share. If there's anybody that could benefit from this content, I would love, love, love to have their support. The Kindle copy expires, it's $1.99 through tomorrow. So if you want the Kindle copy special price, be sure to grab that while you're there. Write a review, please, please, please. And then the virtual content programming that I mentioned, it's just about $200 per person. If you have more than 50, that offer goes down tremendously. And then I would share, if we are not connected on LinkedIn already, that's the best place to find me. I post every day. I made a post my daughter actually took of us getting this all started today virtually. So I'd love your support there, and to follow your work and to continue to stay connected with you. Shani, thanks for sharing the assessment. So I'll stay on if anybody has questions, comments. I know it's 5 o'clock Eastern, so I want to be mindful of everybody going back to their day job. Brad, 5-star reviews on Amazon today if you haven't already. Lead like an Ella and one. Oh, thank you, Brad. That's so kind of you. Yeah, and it's just hit the review button. It's not hard to find. Sometimes you have to scroll down. It's on the left-hand side. If you find existing reviews, you can add one. Thanks, Diane. Thank you for the congratulations. That means a lot to me. Thanks, everybody, for being allies and being with me today. I don't think, did I have any more polls? Just want to make sure. All right, I think that was it. Yes, we officially wrapped up and I got through everything I wanted to my list. So thank you for being with me. Any questions? I'm happy to stick around and answer those. So thank you. I really enjoyed the time with y'all.